the Mexican Revolution of 1910. Millions of Mexican peasants rebelled against their own government due to the fact that only a selected few were granted huge parcels of land, and the average citizen was a poor one. The goal of the revolution was to distribute the land to the peasants once they broke away from their current government and created a new one. After a decade of war between the Mexican citizens and the Mexican army, the Mexican peasants were victorious. The Mexican government was replaced, yet things did not go as planned. The land was kept by wealthy, powerful people, and the Mexican land was not distributed amongst the poor. The objective of the war was a failure. To make matters more difficult, the war destroyed the little economy that supported the Mexican peasants, leaving the country even in deeper poverty. This poverty meant that the average citizen had little education, which made their job opportunities limited to farm work. Unfortunately, Mexico is not geographically fit for agricultural farming. There was little rainfall, and only 1/3 of Mexico's land is level enough for farmland. For decades, Mexican peasants had extremely little work, or none at all. Mexico had a huge conflict. The little amount of farmland could not keep up with the huge amount of farm workers.
United States of America, spring of 1941. Over 1 million agricultural farmers moved from harvesting crops to city work. This lack of farm workers is being noticed, and the issue is being pressed. In states such as Washington, they were driven to desperate measures, such as farm laboring, where all citizens were urged to register as farm workers. They even targeted school children. These children went from 5 days of school a week to 6 days of school a week, so that the school year would end earlier, giving them more time and opportunity to work in the fields. Washington was one of almost all the agricultural states that needed farm workers.
But things didn't get any better, because on December 7, 1941, the United States entered World War II, when Pearl Harbor was bombed. World War II's need for soldiers and war factory workers took all the remaining farm laborers. Now the United States had a huge conflict. The little amount of farm workers could not keep up with the huge amount of farmland.
Inevitably, a compromise was made. On August 4, 1942, the United States and the Mexican government instituted the Emergency Farm Labor Supply Program. This program would later be known as the Bracero Program.
In Empalme, Sonora, which is like 300 miles or about that much distance away from the border, they used to go ahead and have a center, I guess, in that place where Mexican authorities used to recruit Mexican people to come over and work in the United States. That's where they used to go ahead and screen them to see if they were young, because they were looking for young people to go ahead and work, strong young people that had experience working in the field. In Empalme, the people who were in charge of recruiting Mexicans for the Bracero program will go ahead and sell the passes, or whatever it is called, the numbers. I guess they would go ahead and give them numbers to come over and have a physical, with Mexican doctors, so that they would go ahead and determine whether the Mexican kids or people were fit to work in the United States.
The Bracero program offered temporary visas to young Mexican men. These men would be farm workers in the United States. In return for 50 cents an hour, a place in a Bracero camp to sleep, along with 3 meals a day.
They had a kitchen and they had dormitories there, and they fed them real good. I remember once in a while I got invited to eat with them, and they really fed them good. I mean, there was nobody was complaining. Everybody was eating real good.
They didn't have tortillas or any of the Mexican food, and people who were back coming from Mexico, they missed. That's one of the things that they missed the most.
The Braceros were also promised 64 hours of work in every 2 weeks and a few minor health benefits.
Todos los contratos de Bracero venían por 45 días.
The contract could be renewed if the employer thought the Bracero was a good worker.
Pero si trabajaba despacio la persona, decían, no más, ya no quiero estos. Y esa era una forma de extorsionar al trabajador a que trabajara mucho, muy recio.
Once word got out in Mexico of this great opportunity, millions of Mexican men left their homes and families and set out for the United States by train and bus.
And they seemed, well, compared to what they had in Mexico, I guess this over here was really a lot better.
By September 19th, 1942, the first group of Mexican braceros arrived in Stockton, California. These Mexican men were then sent to offices, where they signed up and were assigned to farms all over the United States. In the offices, the Mexican men were asked to show their calloused hands to prove that they were experienced farm workers, because only experienced farm workers were wanted for the program. Yet the braceros did face difficulties while in the United States. Firstly, the Bracero Program contracts were written in English, while the braceros knew only Spanish, so they were unaware of what they were signing. Also, before entering the United States, the braceros were fumigated with DDT, an insecticide that is poisonous to humans, to rid them of fungi and parasites.
Toda la ropa y los llenaban de polvo, de eso para la, pues decían que ellos que para los piojos y pulgas y chinches, que todo lo que trajeran de México, que con eso se morían. Y después también les decían que no se tenían que bañar dentro de 24 horas para que el polvo trabajara bien y que a veces se andaban hasta ahogando porque no les daban máscara para tapar para la nariz, para respirar, y las personas que los sprayaban sí traían, pero ellos no.
In addition to that, there were problems with the braceros' payment. For instance, at the beginning of the program, the braceros were not paid the promised amount. In effect of this, the braceros went on strike, and so their employers raised their pay by 25 cents.
Moreover, small amounts of money were taken out of the braceros' paychecks by the United States government. The agreement was that the money taken out of the paychecks would be given to the braceros once he returned to Mexico, but the money never got to the braceros. The U.S. government said they had sent it, the Mexican government said they never got it.
Racism was another factor that the braceros faced while in the United States.
Some people were just around and police will just go ahead and get people that were just walking along, and because they looked like they were not from the city, they would just go ahead and put them in jail and charge them of crimes that they really didn't do. So it's just that, everybody was taking advantage of the braceros around that area.
The Bracero program ended in 1964 when union and moral activists pressured the United States Congress into terminating the program.
Although there were some flaws in the Bracero program's 22-year life, it harbored over 6 million braceros, and it served its purpose as a compromise between the United States and Mexico's farm labor conflicts. The United States shortage of farm workers was filled by Mexican men who were desperate for work and money.
The Bracero program has greatly influenced the flow of immigrants from Mexico to the United States today. Because of the Bracero program, the Mexican citizens have realized the opportunity America has in store for them. Therefore, over 300,000 legal and illegal Mexican immigrants come from Mexico to the United States every year.
Also, 11 million Mexicans live in the United States, which is 11% of Mexico's population.
Their kids start coming up. They got a little education, and now you see a lot of them are even running their own business.
Now Mexican citizens will always have an opportunity for work, money, and safety.